No, 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 Kodak, you lying. Oh my God.
What was supposed to be a routine food pickup for Kodak Black quickly descended into chaos the moment a cashier reached for a phone. Reports indicate that within minutes, gunshots erupted inside the restaurant, sending Kodak fleeing for his life. But did he survive? The shocking footage speaks for itself. The Pizza Hut incident, when fandom turns dangerous. Before we examine the absolute pandemonium that unfolded inside a Pizza Hut on the evening of February 15, 2026, it is essential to understand something critically important about the reality Kodak Black navigates every single day. When the average person walks into a restaurant, the only thought on their mind is what they are about to eat. Perhaps they are deliberating over extra cheese or weighing whether garlic knots justify the upcharge. Perhaps they are debating between a large and a medium, fully aware they will consume every last slice regardless. But when you are a rapper burdened with the kind of history, the kind of baggage, and the kind of target on your back that Kodak Black has carried for the better part of a decade, stepping into any public space becomes a calculated risk every single time, no exceptions. On that particular evening, Kodak Black, born Bill Cahan Capri, entered a Pizza Hut in a casual manner for what appeared to be a straightforward order pickup. He was not alone. Standing beside him was Miranda Johnson, the mother of 2 of his children. The pair walked in like any ordinary couple collecting a late-night order. The setting was entirely unremarkable, a typical fast food establishment at night, dim lighting, a near-empty dining area. Nothing about the scene foreshadowed what was about to unfold. Kodak was dressed inconspicuously, wearing a cap and casual attire, looking entirely at ease. Simply a man and the mother of his children grabbing a bite to eat. That sense of ease lasted approximately 5 seconds. The very moment the cashier behind the counter recognized the man standing before them, the entire atmosphere transformed. And I mean the entire atmosphere. The energy in that restaurant inverted like a switch being flipped. Oh my God, oh my God. That is the sound of a person whose composure completely disintegrated in real time. The cashier, whose sole responsibility was to process an order and hand over food, immediately retrieved a phone and began recording, overcome with excitement. In that instant, the entire dynamic of the interaction shifted from professional service to personal fandom. The cashier was no longer an employee at a fast food chain. In the span of a single heartbeat, they had transformed into a fan who simply could not contain themselves. Now, here is where things took a serious turn. Kodak Black did not smile for the camera. He did not pose. He did not lean into the moment the way some public figures might. Instead, he subtly retreated and turned toward the exit, fully prepared to abandon his order. He was finished. The food could remain on that counter because Kodak Black was not about to remain in a space where someone was pointing a camera at his face without permission, a public setting where anyone could be watching. One might think it is just a phone, it is just an excited fan, what is the issue? And if that is the reaction, then it is clear that the tragic fate of PnB Rock has already faded from memory. When Kodak Black sees a camera emerge in a restaurant, he is not thinking about clout. He is not thinking about going viral. He is thinking about survival. Social media users grasped this immediately. Reactions flooded in, with commenters warning that this was precisely how PnB Rock had been targeted. Others observed that Kodak was not about to take that chance, referencing the very real and thoroughly documented danger that accompanies having one's location broadcast to the entire world without consent. But then came a twist that no one anticipated. Just as Kodak was about to disappear through that door and vanish into the night, the cashier did something that stopped him dead in his tracks.
Kodak, I love you, bro.
The panic in that voice was unmistakable. In a single, terrifying instant, the cashier realized they had made a grave error. They had allowed their excitement to override their professionalism, and now the very person they admired most was literally walking away because of it.
No, 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 Kodak, you lying. Oh my God.
And that plea, that desperate, almost childlike plea, is what brought Kodak back. After a brief moment of hesitation, he returned, pointed to the menu to confirm his order, and proceeded with the transaction. The interaction, which had teetered on the precipice of becoming yet another cautionary tale about celebrity in public spaces, de-escalated in a matter of seconds. Ultimately, the encounter concluded amicably, complete with a fist bump and staff photographs. Yet one question seemed to hang over the entire episode like a gathering storm. Was the cashier in the wrong, or was Kodak overreacting? The answer, as you are about to discover, is far more nuanced than it initially appears. The making of a man who cannot trust anyone. To truly comprehend why Kodak Black reacted the way he did in that Pizza Hut, one must travel back, far back to the streets of Pompano Beach, back to the housing projects, back to the very first time a young boy named Diuson Octave came to the sobering realization that the world was not built to keep him safe. And when one examines that history in earnest, what emerges is a narrative that makes it entirely understandable why a camera phone inside a fast food restaurant can feel as threatening as a loaded weapon. Kodak Black was not born into comfort. He was not born into stability. He was not born into anything that even remotely resembled the kind of life that would permit a person to relax in a Pizza Hut without constantly surveying their surroundings. Born Diuson Octave on June 11, 1997, in Pompano Beach, Florida, he grew up in abject poverty within the Golden Acres public housing project, raised by a single Haitian immigrant mother. His father was absent from his life. The neighborhood was unforgiving, the opportunities scarce, and the path forward was defined in the most stark and brutal terms conceivable. There was no safety net, there was no contingency plan. There was only the harsh reality of the streets and whatever one could cobble together to endure them. He would later reflect on those formative years, describing how he was essentially presented with two options: sell drugs with a firearm on his hip, or rap. Those were the only two doors the universe placed before a child who had not yet completed elementary school. And speaking of school, he was expelled in the 5th grade for fighting and arrested for auto theft during middle school. By the age when most children are preoccupied with homework and recess, Kodak was already navigating a system that extended very little patience and even less mercy to a young black boy growing up in South Florida. The system was not designed to rescue him, it was designed to process him. But music called to him, even as the streets exerted their relentless pull, even as the temptations of fast money and faster trouble beckoned, he discovered something in the rhythm, in the words, in the act of setting pen to paper and transmuting pain into poetry. By the age of 6, he had adopted the nickname Black. By 12, he had joined local rap collectives such as Brutal Youngins and the Coleons. He was honing his craft in the most unconventional classrooms imaginable: trap houses, street corners, makeshift studios held together with duct tape and raw ambition. He even studied dictionaries and thesauruses to expand his vocabulary, teaching himself the intricacies of language in the very same spaces where others were measuring product. And then, the music started gaining traction. His breakthrough arrived with mixtapes like Project Baby in 2013 and the viral track No Flockin' in 2014, propelled further by Drake's endorsement. Suddenly, the kid from Golden Acres was on everyone's radar. Signed to Atlantic Records in 2015, he went on to release chart-topping albums, including Painting Pictures, which debuted at number 3 on the Billboard 200, and Dying to Live, which reached the coveted number 1 position. Hits like Tunnel Vision and the sextuple Platinum ZZ were inescapable. Kodak Black was no longer merely a local rapper from South Florida. He was a national phenomenon. The world recognized his name, his face, his voice. And that caliber of visibility, as he would soon discover, carries a price that no one warns you about until it is far too late. But fame, as it so often does for young men who emerge from nothing, ushered in a tidal wave of trouble that threatened to engulf everything he had constructed. Because while the music was ascending the charts, Kodak Black was accumulating arrests at a pace that strained credibility. In 2015 alone, he was arrested in Pompano Beach on charges of robbery, battery, kidnapping, false imprisonment, and cannabis possession. In 2016, multiple arrests followed: weapons and marijuana charges in Hollandale Beach, armed robbery in Broward County, and a first-degree criminal sexual conduct allegation in South Carolina. The list continued to expand. The year 2017 brought probation violations and additional jail time. In 2018, he faced charges for child neglect, firearm theft, and felon in possession of a weapon. Then 2019 delivered the blow that many believed would end his career permanently: federal weapons charges that resulted in a 46-month prison sentence. Consider that for a moment. Nearly 4 years behind bars for a man in his early 20s whose entire livelihood depended on being present, being visible, being in the studio and on the stage. It was a devastating sentence. But then, something occurred that no one could have predicted. In January 2021, President Trump commuted Kodak's sentence after he had served approximately 10 months. A presidential commutation, the kind of intervention that typically happens in cinema, not in reality, and certainly not for a rapper from the housing projects of Pompano Beach. Yet freedom did not equate to peace, because the legal system was far from finished with Kodak Black. In 2022, he was arrested for trespassing in January, then charged with oxycodone trafficking and possession in July when police discovered 31 pills and nearly $75,000 in cash during a traffic stop. That case remained unresolved, proceeding without a confirmed trial date through 2025. In December 2023, he was arrested in Plantation, Florida for cocaine possession, a charge subsequently dismissed with laboratory analysis confirmed the substance was prescribed oxycodone. By February 2024, a federal judge sentenced him to time served for a probation violation, and by April, the remaining tampering charge was also dismissed. Over a dozen arrests, multiple prison sentences, a presidential commutation, cases stretching across half a decade, and through it all, one constant, unyielding truth. Every single time Kodak Black was in public, he was being watched by fans, by law enforcement, by the media, by people who wanted a piece of him, and by people who wanted to take everything from him. So is it truly any wonder that when a cashier at a Pizza Hut retrieved a phone and began recording him, his first instinct was to leave? Is it genuinely so difficult to understand why a man with this particular history would see a camera lens and immediately envision the worst-case scenario? A relationship forged in fire. But there is another dimension to this story that most observers missed entirely. Standing directly beside Kodak in that restaurant was a woman whose presence told a story of its own, a story of conflict, custody disputes, allegations, and ultimately, reconciliation. Miranda Johnson, 23 years old, shares 2 children with Kodak, a daughter born around 2022 and a son in 2024. Their relationship has been nothing but tranquil. In August 2025, Johnson accused Kodak of domestic violence and unpaid child support in a Broward County custody filing, alleging abuse that included beatings during pregnancy, resulting in a dislocated jaw. No criminal charges were ever filed against Kodak in connection with those allegations. Johnson herself encountered legal difficulties, arrested for charges of vandalism for damaging Kodak's luxury vehicles, and misdemeanor battery stemming from an altercation at their daughter's birthday party. By September 3, 2025, the custody dispute was resolved through an agreed-upon parenting plan, and all related legal actions were dismissed. The fact that these 2 individuals were standing side by side in a Pizza Hut just 5 months later communicated something significant to anyone paying attention. Something had shifted. Perhaps, despite everything they had endured together, despite the court filings, the accusations, and the arrests, they were finding a way to make it work for the sake of their children. They were choosing peace. But the internet had no interest in co-parenting progress. The internet was interested in content. And what transpired next demonstrated precisely why Kodak Black has every justification for being wary of the cameras that follow him wherever he goes. The aftermath, viral fame, real danger, and the ghosts that haunt hip-hop. The video detonated across social media. There's simply no other way to describe it. Within 24 hours of surfacing on TikTok, the clip had proliferated to X through accounts such as @MyMixtapes and @DailyLoud, with captions emphasizing the humor in the cashier's desperate plea. Engagement metrics soared. The Daily Loud post alone garnered over 5,975 likes, 165 reposts, and 125 replies by February 17th. Instagram Reels, Facebook shares, YouTube Shorts, every platform seized upon the video, and each ran with the narrative in a slightly different direction. Some viewers found it hilarious, and in fairness, from a certain vantage point, it possessed an undeniable comedic quality. Users like @Thabao characterized it as pure comedy gold, praising the cashier's enthusiasm as a once-in-a-lifetime moment while acknowledging that Kodak handled it admirably. There was something genuinely amusing at witnessing a grown adult behind a cash register completely lose their composure because a celebrity walked in to purchase pizza. The memes practically wrote themselves. People were crafting jokes, stitching the video, layering their own commentary. It was peak internet entertainment. But beneath the laughter, a far darker conversation was taking shape. Others, such as @William258111, speculated openly. Paranoia or just over it? And that question, deceptively simple as that may sound, struck at the very heart of what it means to be famous in hip-hop in 2026. To understand why, one must revisit Roscoe's Chicken and Waffleful, South Los Angeles on September 12, 2022. PnB Rock, real name Rakim Hashim Allen, was 30 years old. He had a fiancée, he had children, he had hit records and platinum plaques. He walked into a restaurant for a meal and never walked out alive. Freddie Trone orchestrated the crime by dispatching his 17-year-old son to execute the robbery and shooting. The attack was swift and merciless. Surveillance footage revealed that an accomplice, Tremont Jones, had fist-bumped PnB Rock at 12:31 p.m., potentially identifying his jewelry, valued at approximately $500,000, and alerting Trone. The shooter entered at 1:16 p.m. wearing a ski mask, demanded valuables at gunpoint, and opened fire after a brief struggle, striking Rock in the chest and back. He was pronounced dead less than an hour later. Trone was convicted in 2024 of murder, conspiracy, and robbery, receiving a sentence of 31 years to life. Jones received 12 years for robbery and conspiracy. Justice, in the legal sense, was served, but PnB Rock was still gone. His children would still grow up without their father, and the hip-hop community was left with a wound that has never fully healed, and likely never will. This is the context that every single person commenting on that Pizza Hut video understood on some fundamental level. When Kodak Black saw that phone emerge, he was not seeing a fan. He was seeing a threat. He was seeing a potential location tag. He was seeing every headline he had ever absorbed about a rapper who found himself in the wrong place at the wrong time because someone decided that content took precedence over a human being's safety. And Kodak has been in this position before. This was not the first occasion on which he drew a firm boundary over being filmed without consent. In 2022, shortly after PnB Rock's murder, Kodak reprimanded a fan on Instagram Live for filming